All right, welcome to the Goat District Fantasyland, aka the Goatcast. We are bringing some more heavy hitters tonight. I'm fresh off of a Raptors win. I'm pretty pumped about that. Just Dan, it doesn't even matter who we played. We matched them. That's all I know. We may have lost one of our best players in Lowry, but even without him for a half, we we're good. And one of our guests tonight, actually, I get to thank his team tonight for helping me out with a huge win at the Buzzard, man. But before we get to the goodness, Dan, tonight we're talking. This is one of my favorite shows. We started doing this with one of the guests that we have on tonight, and we brought on another heavy hitter to join him. But it's our trap show, man. This is always a fun time. We're talking traps, whether it's redraft, dynasty, big tournament. Anything that you're drafting right now, there's always those guys that you want to avoid. So we're going to kind of bring some of our favorites. You pumped or what, Dan?
Oh, I'm definitely pumped for this. Yeah, it's a fun topic. And, at this time when everybody's starting to get into their drafts, it's so important to know who you need to fade right now. And so we've got, as you said, some heavy hitters to help us out with that.
It's a trap.
Nice.
Had to get that in there. So you know what? I'm just gonna bring them in. Like I said, this first guy, I gotta thank him because I turned on the game. The Mavericks are playing today, and I gotta thank the NBA schedule because I don't know if he'd be on with us, Dan, if Dallas was playing right now. But they pulled off like a serious win at the Buzzard. But Noah Riddell, man, welcome back to the Goat District. And how do you feel after that big win?
That was awesome. It was a transcendent game for Luka. It's one of those games that a player has where they announce themselves onto the stage as one of the best players in all of the sport. And at 21 years old, he's already one of the 5 best basketball players in the NBA. And that game coming off of a sprained ankle 2 days ago, showing up, playing with no Kristaps Porzingis, and finding a way to win against probably the best team in the NBA. I think that's a performance that it will be difficult to forget.
Yeah, I joke about thanking you just because we're just sick of hearing that we only won because of Kawhi up here. So we want to do it without him, and B, if the Clippers don't get to the final, I wouldn't shed a tear or anything. But that was an awesome win because Kawhi had just, if anyone missed it, just got an assist on the Clippers, could be winning basket. And then he just right at the buzzer, man. That was beautiful. If you missed that, go check it out. But like I said, man, we've got Noah, thanks for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. We always appreciate you coming on. We always have a ton of fun, especially on this show. And we got another big hitter here. See, I asked you and I still messed it up. At Hilo FF, if you guys for sure see him out there on Twitter, and he's got his accolades with regards to just winning in fantasy, and we love when he comes on the show. So thanks for joining us tonight, Mark.
Yeah, man, stoked to be back, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got some fun stuff going on right now, huh?
Oh yeah, life is good, dude.
You got to take a couple minutes and fill us in on the new fantasy site. Just give us a little taste.
Oh, for sure, man. I want to hear about that.
Yeah. So a couple of guys and myself are starting a new fantasy contest provider site. We're basically, first and foremost, a fantasy contest provider site, but we're trying to really change the game of fantasy football and shift the focus away from the game to the players itself, and kind of find the best, celebritize them, and celebrate them. So we're really excited. You can find it at ffworldseries.com and on Twitter at ffworldseries. And our marquee event this year is going to be our Invitational, which actually Noah is participating in as well.
That's correct.
It's a $10,000 buy-in tournament, and it basically is leveraging our proprietary format. What was that?
That's my Donald Trump. I'm really rich drop. Sorry,
okay.
man. I didn't mean to break your vibe there.
Yeah. So no, we're launching a new format as well, kind of under our umbrella. It's a quarterly format, so we'll draft basically a team for a quarter, and in doing so, we're kind of leveraging multiple different formats and the kind of skills and takes what it takes to master each format. So the quarterly format kind of merging DFS ideas and skills with season long. And that'll be leveraged in our invitational, where the contestants will draft across 4 different draft types. You have regular PPR, snake draft, Superflex, auction, as well as oh Jesus! Oh no, I'm on the spot. Best ball. Sorry, that was dumb. So yeah, the 4 big kind of major formats: drafting 1 team for a quarter, and then rotating formats, and you'll get a point value assigned with kind of your quarterly finish. And then at the end, folding in a little bit more of a DFS aspect, where the top 3 players have that final table kind of feel and are drafting against each other for a week 17 only for the championship. So interesting concept that we're trying to kind of bring the community a little bit together. And another way that we're going to try and do that is by launching the first ever season long leaderboard ranking structure. And we're going to be fighting pretty hard to get the top members that work their way up the leaderboard, personal sponsors, and kind of change the game a little bit. So pretty excited about it. Overall concept, we're going to have a bunch of different stuff launching that I can't really talk about yet for the rest of this season, as well as for 2021. But and another big thing we're doing this year is a quarterly best ball tournament. So kind of, again, there's best ball providers launching every day, it seems, in the past couple of weeks, but we're going to try and provide a larger draft window for gamers to come in and draft for a quarter best ball tournament. So that'll be pretty cool as well.
So this site is live and kicking right now.
The site is live. The site is live. We have not launched our contest lobby yet, and that'll be happening in the next 17 days. So yeah, final pedal to the metal grind, and then our contest will launch.
Awesome, man. So go check that out for sure. Something new and exciting for Fantasyland, and that definitely, I like that leaderboard idea for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Noah, did you before we get into the goodness, anything you want to tell Fantasyland that's going on? I know you always got some cool stuff going on, but anything specific?
Been doing a lot of NBA and MLB sports betting lately, so just trying that out, seeing how that goes. It's been going pretty well. The last day or two has been tough, just with some of the wild results, but overall it's been positive. So
you were on a major heater there for a while, Noah.
Yeah, I went like three or 4 days where I couldn't lose a bet, which was interesting. You know, it's like 48-3 overall for 3 days, and then after that, you know, I'm kind of on the other end of it right now. So just
paying the price.
Yeah, all I heard was the 3, dude. Sorry, do better.
Well, I'm not trying to parlay everything.
Nice.
Wow. It's pretty much
all the wins count if you're not parlaying everything.
Yeah,
that's right.
I'm a sticker for parlays, man.
9 of 10 is still a loss.
Yeah. That's hilarious. Well, good luck with that. I mean, that's so. Just to ask you really quick, is that like is that something that happened because of COVID or because of, you know, the way sports rolled out, or is that something, because you said you're trying it out, like, is that the reason, or it's just something you've been wanting to try out and now it just happened?
No, I mean, I've been doing it for a while, but I've been over at the new FTN site and working with those guys, and they asked me if I would be interested in, you know, whatever I was betting on, just post it and see how it does as far as you tracking it and seeing what the results look like. And so I started doing that, and it's gone pretty well.
So if people are interested in following you on that, they can just go over to the FTN site and subscribe and get your picks. That
is correct.
Nice.
That's huge.
Yeah, especially when you're on a 48-3 heater. So
yeah,
that was. We'll let you guys know when Noah gets hot again. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what you want to catch.
All right, Noah, I'm actually going to start off with you because you're the returning It's a Trap. I don't remember how we got this idea. I don't know if it was Dan or you, but it just seemed to kind of really work, and it was one of our most downloaded shows last year. So we're, like I said, we're pumped that we can make it work and get one together before the season starts again. So why don't you start this off? Is there someone when you're looking at where you're ranking or tiering guys versus where ADP and Fantasyland are perceiving them, where you're seeing value, whether it's redraft, dynasty, or any format that you're doing?
I think that I would like to start off with someone who's rising up fantasy boards rapidly right now, whose ADP is climbing a lot, and that would be Ronald Jones. I would say you can go ahead and drop the "It's a Trap" sounder for that one. But I mean, what you're trying to get with Ronald Jones is a fairly narrow workload anyway. He's not going to be the pass catching running back. At least that's not what he's good at, and really he's not good at much. But that's definitely not it. So, he's rising up. I've seen him go in the 4th round recently. For a while when he was going in the 9th round, I think that's a fine play. That's a fine pick in the 9th round, even in the 8th round, as a guy that you're hoping will deliver you a few good weeks. But now that he's moving up into the 4th round, he's going ahead of guys like Cam Akers and a few other players that I'm much more interested in. I just think that it's a trap to bet on a player that's never been demonstrably good anywhere in his career and has some clear deficiencies on a team where being able to pass protect and catch passes from Tom Brady is probably the most important thing. So for those reasons, I would put Ronald Jones as my trap if he's moving up into the 4th round. In the 9th round, it's fine to take a risk on him because you don't have to start a player that you take in the 9th round. But if he's moving up into one of those early rounds where you're actually going to have to start this player and they have to deliver for you, I think that I'm going to stay far away.
All right. So Noah Riddell calls Rojo.
It's a trap.
It took me a while to unmute it, so we'll have to play the trap after you guys go through your little explanation. So what do you guys think? I know this backfield is a huge topic this offseason. Dan, we were following in the GOAT chat earlier today, actually just a couple hours ago, that this exact conversation was going on where a few days ago, Rojo was, climbing, and now he dropped a couple balls in practice, one more than Vaughn or whatever it was. And then, now everybody wants Vaughn. So where are you guys sitting on this Tampa Bay backfield? And are you with Noah, in avoiding Rojo? I'll go to Hilo first, again, Dan, just being polite for our guests here.
Yeah. These kind of backfields where there's not much certainty behind, it's typically mantra of mine to just take the cheaper back or fade it completely. And a month ago that was Rojo, and I was taking him in the 8th or 9th, where the unknowns are a little bit mitigated by that price. And he could come back and provide RB2 numbers at a 9th round ADP, and that's plenty fine for what you're looking for in best ball and in redraft. So I have a few shares of 8th and 9th round Rojo, but now like 4th or 5 turn, there's no way that you're investing in any backfield that has so many unknowns. It's just the dead zone. So 100% agree with Noah there.
Dan, how do you feel about it on a redraft level, but also, if you peek forward dynasty wise, and maybe you're approaching it the same way? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I got a little bit of Rojo in Dynasty in the off season when he was cheap, so now it's maybe time for me to turn around and sell him. I'll have to take a look. I've only got a couple shares of him around, so I got to even see what my other team is. I know one team for sure, and the other one I'm like, I can't remember which team he's on. But anyway, I think he's worth getting out there and selling right now because of, especially if you can catch him after a good day in camp. I mean, his price is literally bouncing around from day to day right now based on how many drops he has. I mean, we're at the peak of Twitter overreaction season. So you want to take advantage of that. When you're looking to sell anybody like Rojo, you want to sell them after a good day at camp, not a bad day at camp.
Yeah, that's kind of my approach with these guys in Dynasty. If I had them, it's because they were kind of dropping, especially Vaughn was the beginning of, I would say just after the draft. He was, I don't know, for whatever reason, people just didn't want a piece of him. And then all of a sudden, he's kind of been going like in waves, I find, with Vaughn, and that doesn't seem to change now that they're back on the field for practice. So for me, I'm just trying to catch the upside, like we normally do with these guys. If I do own them, and if I can sell them at a good price, Otherwise, I mean, you hold on and they're a nice piece of depth for the season. Again, tied to an offense that you would hope is going to put up some points and, you know, with the division they're in and all that fun stuff. But again, maybe not something I'm investing in highly moving forward in either format. Is there, Hilo, where are you looking for the first name you want to throw out on the table here with regards to someone you're maybe avoiding?
Yeah, so I'm not going to lead with a name. I'm actually going to lead with an entire position. And pretty much tight end 5 through tight end 17 is a stay away from me. It's the biggest trap zone that there is in fantasy football. You're looking at outside of the top 4, it is the flattest position, scoring position fantasy, especially for redraft, where you're having to pick who you're starting at that position. You can go and pick, you know, try and grab 2 of them and play matchups, but there's really no winning that game. It's only a break-even game. So I'm either taking a top 4 tight end or I'm waiting. Jonnu is kind of on the cusp, but Jonnu, Herndon, guys like Jack Doyle even, who should be in a tight end premium. He should see pretty solid volume. And then, you know, you're looking at Ebron, who will carry some spike week potential, especially for best ball. So that whole range of tight end for me is a pretty big stay away.
Yeah, Dan, we talk about that often, you know, hitting one of those top 3 or 4 guys and then maybe waiting, go past, especially like guys like Ingram it's been hard for guys like that to stay on the field. Noah, what's your general approach with, you know, with tight end when you're looking at guys in the different, I guess, spectrum, like Mark is mentioning, you know, you've got that top tier, you've got the rest of those middle guys, and then you've got like a tier at the bottom where you can find value, which is what Mark is describing here. Is that kind of how you're seeing the position, or is there guys before that, you know, kind of Jonnu, Ian Thomas range where you're liking to pick up in your drafts?
I generally, if I don't get one of the top 4 or 5, then I don't touch it until I get to later. What I like to do is find a guy that is one of the last tight ends that I can take in drafts that will then the following year be taken in the top 5 rounds. Last season, and I know Hilo got to experience this as well, but my highest owned tight end was actually Darren Waller because he was free early in the offseason, and he ended up outscoring Zach Ertz. So I love guys like that where there's a lot of upside, and you can pick a tight end that's going fairly late that will deliver a much higher fantasy output than what they're expected to. So if I'm not getting one of the top guys that is, you know, a lock for a whole lot of receiving yards, a whole lot of touches, then I like to find some of the late round upside guys that can really, really outperform. But I typically try to stay away from that dead zone in the middle.
Yeah, it's funny. I might as well throw my guy in because he's right in that range. One of them, anyways. One of the guys that I kind of marked down was Tyler Higbee. I just can't trust him where he's going. He averaged over 10 targets a game the last 5 games last year in 2019, 56 total. It was basically like him and Woods were basically, you know, getting all the targets there. Kupp he's coming off, he's going into his 2nd season off of that big injury. So you should see, I would imagine an improvement there. But I mean, he looked really good last year for coming off the injury that he did. So you're hoping that he comes back, takes a bigger part of the added Akers. Everett, for me, coming back could take up a big chunk of that. I feel like, you know, either they split it or Everett maybe could even, I don't know. I mean, look, Higbee showed well for what they asked him to do during that stretch, but I feel like that was a result of the environment of what was going on at that time. Do you guys agree, disagree with Higbee? I know Hilo, he's not in that range that you're targeting anyways, but do you guys still like Higbee going into this season at his price right now?
No, so the biggest fault of that entire range of tight end is there's such a wide range of outcomes, and especially for the tight end 5 through 12, you're really paying a premium to bet that they're going to be on the high side of that, you know, likeliest scenario range of outcomes. And that's kind of feeds into kind of how I like to draft. And you really got to be thinking about, or at least how I handle it is you're thinking about that likely scenario range of outcomes and projecting floors and ceilings and managing your roster kind of overall as a portfolio to really balance the risk versus reward. And if you're taking one of those tight ends, you really have to not assume that the worst case scenario of their floor is going to happen, but build for that in mind, because there is such a wide range of outcomes. And Higbee, there is probably the widest range of outcomes there is in that range.
For me, he's the Drew Lock of tight ends. You got a 5-game sample size. He's going way above. I mean, Lock is not going as high as him. He's not going as QB 10. But, he's kind of like that same – the guys who like Lock, I mean, they really like Lock, right? Anything else to add, Noah, on Higbee? Or?
Well, I would say that bringing up Higbee is a great way to lead into my next trap.
Perfect.
Because my next trap is going to be any pass-catching weapon on the Rams. Because
It's a trap.
Because it may work out great for you for the first half of the season, and it may work out great for you for any particular stretch of the season. But what we've seen from them is a track record of entirely throwing their offense in the garbage and starting over when things stop working. Sean McVay understands what he has in Jared Goff, and he runs a gimmick-type offense. And when the gimmick stops working because teams catch up to it, he just flips the switch, changes the gimmick, and moves on. So if you are drafting Rams players, it really depends on the format that you're in. Best ball, it's probably more advantageous. But last season, for example, if you had drafted Cooper Kupp, you were feeling fantastic about that after week 9. Because after week 9, Cooper Kupp was the number 2 wide receiver in fantasy. The only wide receiver with more fantasy points than Cooper Kupp last year after over half of the season was Michael Thomas. And then if you had dropped him on that day, you'd have been better off, because if you started him the rest of the season, you were losing. He went from being the number 2 wide receiver in fantasy to outside of the top 36 because they looked at what was happening with their offense. They changed a few things. They went to a different grouping of personnel, and Cooper Kupp became an afterthought. Didn't score points again until week 17 when your fantasy playoffs were already over. So the Rams, they're going to produce a lot of fantasy points, but who produces when is going to be a massive question. And there's potential for it to just change drastically at any point in the season. We saw the same thing 2 years ago. They made a drastic switch when Todd Gurley's knee started acting up, and they gave all of those fantasy points to CJ Anderson, and that became a focal point of their offense. The focal point of their offense is going to change based on what they think that they can do and how they can get Jared Goff to be productive. So that would be my next answer to that question.
Yeah, so buy Jared Goff.
Sean McVay finds a way to make Jared Goff score fantasy points.
There you go.
Even if he's not very good at actually processing information.
Buy Liram Hajrulahu, who's going to win that kicker spot, and they're going to be money between the 20s, and they're not going to be able to score.
There you go. Yeah, I'm kind of with Noah there. I think these players work much better for best ball than they do for managed leagues. It's not to say I won't take them if they drop a little bit, because they could have some super productive stretches, and you can't ignore, totally productive stretches. But when you're paying 4th round prices, that makes it a little bit more difficult. So you ideally want to see them drop into the 5th round or something like that if you're talking about Kupp or Woods, which doesn't happen that often.
And the most consistent member of that group has been Woods.
Right.
When the gimmicks have changed, Woods has remained productive, but he's remained low ceiling the entire time. Mm-hmm. So he's the one that has the role that's at least risk, but also has the least ceiling.
Other than his name, Bobby Woods, he's been going the cheapest, so he's not as sexy as the other guys. Even Cooks was going ahead of him, I believe, the last 2 seasons, if I'm not wrong. But yeah, I mean, Woods is one of those guys where he was just overperforming his ADP, right? So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how they, like you said, roll out this offense going into 2020. Dan, anything? Anyone? I know we haven't really had your guy up yet. So who's your first trap?
All right. Let's go with I can't fault Noah because he went with one of his tried and true traps in Ronald Jones, and I have a tried and true trap every year. I can trot him out there. AJ Green. He's always a trap, just always. He's not going to stay healthy. I don't believe he's got it anymore. He's going to have some good games if he's healthy for some games, but I just don't trust him to stay healthy for the season. Granted, you're getting a little bit of a discount. He's going at the beginning of the 7th round in redraft and dynasty. He's probably going quite a bit later than that even, but I would just rather own Tyler Boyd at his ADP than AJ Green at his ADP, because Boyd is not going that much before him. I mean, Boyd's basically going like a couple picks before Green. And give me Boyd, because if Green goes down, Boyd's going to be the one who benefits anyway.
I love AJ Green and I didn't have the volume on. See, I thought I had the clip with all my sound effects, right? When we first went, right when he came on. And then I was like, oh no, I was playing off of YouTube last year when we did it. So I'm trying to do it now, but it doesn't work. It's easier when you can edit it after, so it doesn't work all through the video. But I love that as a trap, because anyone who had AJ Green last year has to agree with you. I mean, I'm not going anywhere near AJ Green this year, just because, I did invest. He was going relatively cheap as to like where you saw his ceiling possibilities, right? And that's what you love about guys like that when you draft them, but you also get burned. And I think that anyone that got burned in 2019 is probably avoiding him going into 2020. You guys have anything to add to that? Hilo, how do you feel about the especially with the new quarterback going there? How do you feel about AJ Green in Cincy?
I was the number one victim of AJ Green in 2019. I can tell you that much.
well, he was
so bad.
He was my number one trap on this show last year when we did this one, JD. So maybe if you would listen.
Yeah, man. I was all over it. Like this, yeah, but not again. 100% agree. I would rather just go Tyler Boyd again. He's more of the floor play, but I mean, you're getting him in the 8th, 9th, 10th round sometimes, even or throughout this offseason. So give me Boyd all day over AJ Green.
Yeah. What I would add to that is that they've got Auden Tate as well, who has shown very well in camp and who played pretty well last year when he got opportunities. And then they also drafted Higgins with the first pick of the 2nd round. And I think that between those two players, they're going to want to give those players reps at some point. So I think that probably is a bad thing for AJ Green, just because both of those guys profile more as outside players, and Tyler Boyd, his role in the slot is probably fairly safe. So I think.
Yeah, and then you've got John Ross too, who they burned a 1st-round pick on, a couple of years ago, and he's not out of chances as much as everybody wants to kind of.
There's still hope.
I think he's going to get some.
Yeah, there's hope for John Ross. I mean, at his price, maybe he pulls a Devontae Adams. You don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he's not anybody I would want to rely on or anything like that. But again, he's going to get some targets in that offense. And that's one of the things that worries me about the Cincinnati offense. If I'm going to buy anybody there, I'm just going to go through Burrow or Mixon, because I feel like the target tree is pretty wide. And, so trying to figure out who's going to be getting targets from week to week. And they're probably going to try to play a little bit ahead of the quarterback, at least to start with, and lean on the running game a little bit more. And so I just, the Cincinnati pass catchers, none of them really excite me this year.
Yeah, and Dan, you nailed that last bit on the head with the expected volume for that passing attack this year. We can't, in full confidence, project them to have the same passing volume that they've had in previous years.
So for Dan, AJ Green is.
It's a trap.
I got it. Yes. All right. So I'm gonna, since we're talking receivers, I mean, actually, you know what? Look, I don't want to like beat a dead horse. So I've mentioned this guy on here before. I'm just gonna ask Noah and Hilo, and then I mean Dan as well. Just I'm sure we've talked about this guy a few times now, but one of my biggest, looking at like the top guys when you're looking at the receiver position that I'm really fading this year, especially for 2020, is Hopkins. I don't know. How do you guys feel about it? I know Dan likes Kyler in that offense. So do I. I just worry about a guy who it seems like he needs 150 plus targets. And I don't know that he's going to get that season 1 in Arizona. And then, on top of that, you have like he missed a couple of days of practice, and people wonder, is that like an injury, or is that his, him wanting a contract renewed? So Hilo, you seem like you want to throw some goodness in there. So why don't you start it off?
Yeah, Nuke is extremely, or Nuke is an intermediate threat, and anybody who tells you different is blowing smoke. So he's not a burner. He is a basically body control wide receiver who is used in the short and intermediate areas of the field, aka Michael Thomas. And at his current wide receiver 5 redraft valuation, that's really not accounting for the fact that he just switched teams. He's got to learn a whole new offense. They've got 17 wide receivers on that team who could step in at any time and play in their 4 and 5 wide out sets. It's insane. But yeah, there's really, if you're projecting Nuke for anywhere over that 140 to 145, maybe 150 target range, I think you're just doing it wrong as far as process goes. So that's really his ceiling in my eyes. So it's really tough to spend, your valuable second round pick on a guy who is changing offenses and we can't confidently project for the same target volume.
Especially when you should be taking a running back there. No.
Well, I got enough to say about that.
Noah, you before Hilo gives us his running back philosophies here. What are your thoughts on the receiver out in Arizona?
I think that Hilo hit it mostly on the head. I think that what you would need from DeAndre Hopkins for him to deliver on his ADP is an outlier touchdown season. If he gets over 9 touchdowns, then I think that he's definitely going to pay off that price. But I don't think that that's really in your expected range of outcomes, because they are going to have a very diffused passing volume, meaning they're going to have a lot of guys that get some volume and not a small group of guys that get all of the volume. They're kind of the opposite of what you'll expect from the Dallas Cowboys, where almost all of the volume is going to go to 4 or 5 places. With Arizona, that's going to be very different. I mean, Larry Fitzgerald's going to get some passes. Christian Kirk's going to be involved. And then they have 3 or 4 more guys that will all be receiving targets, and they'll all be rotating snaps. So I don't think that you can even expect DeAndre Hopkins to play close to 100% of the snaps. So, from a rotation standpoint, from a how does the volume in this offense split between all of the different pass catchers standpoint, I think that it makes sense to have DeAndre Hopkins as one of your traps.
All right, cool. Let's see if I can get it. All right, DeAndre Hopkins as
It's a trap.
Yeah. All right. Is there anyone that we've missed that you guys have on a list that you've written down? I mean, I have one other tight end that I can throw in there, but I feel like he kind of fits in that same range that we've already brought up through Hilo. I'll throw him in if we don't, maybe at the end, or if we don't find anyone else. Hilo, you seem like you might have, or Dan, do you have someone else? Sorry, buddy.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and throw one out that's been rising up draft boards a lot lately. Antonio Gibson. Oh, thanks. Was that your guy?
No, I like that. That's a good one. I didn't think of that, but that's definitely a good one.
Anyway, yeah, when you take a look at him right now in redraft, he's going at like 801. So in the FFPC world, and that's just really rich for a team that's probably going to be very bad. And they have Adrian Peterson, they have Gibson, they've got Love, they've got Peyton Barber, they've got JD McKissick. I don't know how all that's going to work out. You don't either, even though you think you do, you don't. So just, that's a stay away from me, because he's the guy with the least experience out of any of those guys. He barely was used at Memphis, and you got to ask yourself, if he's that great of a player, with such a physical specimen like that, why the heck wasn't he used at Memphis more? So, I think there are things to his game that he either just doesn't process things well, where they have to manufacture the touches for him, or he's just, I don't know, maybe he doesn't work hard. I haven't dug that deep into him yet, but he's just a guy that, when I look at all the, what he did or didn't do in college, super efficient, but just not getting that many touches. And you would think if, he's that efficient, if he's really good, they'd find a way to get him more touches, and they just didn't. So I'm staying away.
So if I do a quick OTC with you, Dan, Zach Moss, you taking him over him?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think Gibson should be down in the, basically around the end of the 11th round, there's a whole lot of running backs I would take over Gibson. I would take I would take.
I see a couple of guys in the 10th, and I know Noah would take one of them, and you and I'd take the other.
I'd take Tevin Coleman. I'd take Boston Scott. I'd take Chase Edmonds. I'd take Tony Pollard. I'd take Darrell Henderson. Any of those guys. I might even take AJ Dillon, Damian Harris, Duke Johnson.
What's interesting is two of those names that you mentioned were the players that Gibson played behind at Memphis.
Exactly.
For the last 2 years.
Yeah, so that tells you something right there too. So, it's just, to me, he does not belong anywhere near where he's at right now. He's got to be down. Bryce Love is now going, like in the early 12th, and I think Gibson and Love should probably be going right around the same spot because, they both have serious question marks about their game right now, and they have Adrian Peterson, who we know, that Ron Rivera is probably going to fall in love with him because he's 3.5 yards in a cloud of dust. So, I think Peterson's going to get a ton of work, and then they're going to rotate in a couple other guys. And then if somebody really shows a lot of, like if Love all of a sudden takes off, or if Gibson all of a sudden takes off, then they might get something later in the year. But I'd just rather not gamble that early, not in the 8th round.
No, I love that call. That's a great call. You guys have anything to add on the Gibson call here?
I would say that I'm somewhat on the other side of that. I think that Gibson has the opportunity for a lot of pass catching work, even if he doesn't get a lot of the running back work. So I don't mind taking him wherever you would take like Tariq Cohen, for example. I think Tariq Cohen's rookie season is probably a good projection for what you would expect from Antonio Gibson.
Okay.
And I think he's got a little bit of ceiling to that as well. So, if he's going much earlier than Tariq Cohen, it's probably a fade. Like if he's going ahead of starting running backs, either of the Miami running backs, I'm not going to take Antonio Gibson over either of the Miami running backs. But after that range, I'm fine taking Antonio Gibson. I think that Bryce Love is cooked from a athletic standpoint. I think that if you look at any of his reps, movement-wise, he's running in quicksand. He's not a very dynamic athlete anymore, and it's just a unfortunate side effect of the really bad knee injuries that he had in college. So I would put Antonio Gibson firmly ahead of him, and I think Gibson plays somewhat as a receiver this year on a team that has no receivers. So maybe that is the difference between my thinking and Dan's thinking, because I think he'll catch 40 to 50 balls just playing out of the backfield, not even including his carries. So I don't really mind him that much, but if he's going, at 801, that's probably rich for me.
Yeah, I have a general rule that just Washington or New York Jets in single digit rounds, I just avoid. Just maybe a flyer in the double digit rounds, but otherwise there's so many. Like Dan, you kind of nailed it. When I look at the guys going in the 2 rounds after, it's probably in the 11th round where I might consider it with the upside, but that offense, especially in the first year, who knows what you get out of it. Look, Peterson says he wants to be there another 5 years. That's what he was saying today. So he loves the fan support out there in Washington, he says. So
that's because he's broke.
Yeah. Child support ain't cheap.
That's right. That's hilarious. All right. Before we go to the partnership of the show, our sponsors, what anyone we miss, guys, when it comes to traps that we haven't talked about? I see Hilo.
Yeah, I got a first rounder. There's not many times where I will go 0% on a first round pick, but this year
you're gonna hurt one of us right now. You know that, right?
Yeah, I hope so. This year, I'm not touching Josh Jacobs, man. In the first round, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, but in the first round, he's basically being drafted as if it is a fact that his passing game role is going to increase. And I can't believe the past 2-day ADP, he's still going 12th overall in the first round. After the Raiders have signed another 4 running backs, 2 of which are pass catchers. Just kidding. They've only signed 2, but still they're pass catchers.
Didn't they just sign another one yesterday or something? I just saw.
Yeah. Theo Riddick, they brought in after they brought in Booker, and they re-signed. Oh God,
Richard.
Yep,
Yep.
Jalen Richard.
Yeah.
2 years, $7 million. That's he's going to get snaps money. So
you don't even
Yeah.
like him at the end there, like on the 12. I see him a lot on the 12 spot where like guys will take 2 running backs and he'll be one of those 2. No.
no, because there's no what basically taking him there is looking at end of year production and saying he's going to end the season there. While he may, his weekly ceiling is not going to be tangible. You're limiting your weekly upside by taking him there because he is a floor only play. Because the only way he's going to see ceiling is if he falls into the paint twice. That's really it, and that's what it boils down to. So he may finish as running back 10, and he may be valued at his draft at the end of the year. I guess I should say there's going to be people that try and justify where he's going right now, like, he's still finished as an RB1. Well, he's really not bringing any upside to the table. And when you're looking at a round 1 pick, you really need a ceiling to go with the floor. You're not only worried about floor in the first round, in my opinion. So basically, when I go round by round, it's a sliding risk scale, and the floor is heavier in the first, but you still need a ceiling to go with your draft pick, and you're just not getting that with Josh Jacobs.
Right. Yeah. I mean, to me, he's a guy who, I don't like Nick Chubb where he's going, and he's going several spots after Josh Jacobs. And, to me, I would rather have Chubb than Jacobs. So that definitely pushed, if I saw Jacobs in the back half of the second round or early third, I'd be all over it. And Chubb in that same range, he needs to push down a few spots too. But, Kenyon Drake, Austin Eckler, even Aaron Jones, I would take over Jacobs if you're talking about just running backs, and then there's a few wide receivers as well.
Dan, I cannot get on board with that last one, but
I'm not surprised. I know a lot of people can't, but I don't know that I don't know how much AJ Dillon is going to do to start with. So I don't love Aaron Jones at his price, and I don't really take him, but I'm just saying, given the choice between him and Jacobs, I would sooner take Jones, but my real answer would be neither one. I'll take somebody else.
Yeah.
Take a wide receiver.
Yeah, exactly.
One thing that I would say about that, Hillo, is there's probably a couple of other running backs that are going in the first round that really have a similar workload projection as far as number of carries and number of targets to Josh Jacobs, that are guys that are going even earlier than him.
Exactly. That's curious.
Why. And they're running behind way worse offensive lines, right? You're talking about a guy who should be running behind one of the top 5.
Right. Well, I'm saying with Josh Jacobs, you're thinking somewhere around 300 carries, close to 4.5 to 5 yards a carry. Your projection for Derrick Henry is probably pretty similar, also passing volume wise. Projection for Ezekiel Elliott's probably pretty similar. So, my question would be, do you think that Josh Jacobs at the 112 is a worse pick than Ezekiel Elliott at the 103 or Derrick Henry at the 107 if those guys would project out for a similar type of volume and are going even earlier?
No. And my answer to that is I'm not taking much of any of those guys. And it's the same kind of thinking goes behind all of it. If I'm not getting one of the, we'll call it top 5 running backs, so McCaffrey, Saquon, Zeke, Kamara, or Cook. And the only reason Zeke I include in that is because it's bankable volume week to week, in that we know he's going to see the rock 18 to 20 times, regardless of game script, regardless of what's going on. I can't say the same thing about Jacobs, and that's why he's not in that kind of range for me. But other than that, I'm really looking to one of the tight ends in tight end premium, either Kels or Kittle, or I'm taking one of the top 3 wide receivers. And the reason for that is you're still getting the same floor but a higher ceiling when you're looking at a weekly game.
So do you see similar concerns with a guy like Jonathan Thomas? Wow. Jonathan Taylor?
Jonathan Taylor Thomas?
JT's a guy I really, really like. Just general dynasty redraft doesn't matter. again, going through behind a great offensive line, not necessarily known to be a guy that's going to catch, get like 80 targets or anything. But do you see similarities between these two when you're looking at ceilings and floors, or?
Yes, it goes into, so really what side of the coin you land on for JT is what your realistic projective range of outcomes are for him from a pure touch perspective. We know that offensive line is dirt nasty. We know that he is an absolute monster with the ball and a monster of a human being. Good God, if you've seen the pictures of him come out this year.
Mm-hmm.
But really, if you're drafting JT at RB16, you're doing so with an end of season stretch run mindset in mind. And you really should be shoring up your running back room on your team. Again, managing the risk versus reward in your portfolio overall to be able to get you to the championship rounds, because there's really no way where you can confidently project Jonathan Taylor to see any more than 12 to 15 touches weekly for the first 8 games, I would say. Anything beyond that, and I think it's a kind of dreamland, la la land scenario, if you're really being honest with most likely projected range of outcomes.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but I would also say that Taylor with 10 to 15 touches can do a lot with them on any given week. To me, it's all about price. When you're talking about the end of the 3rd round, there's a place where I'm willing to start taking gambles like that, and especially when I agree that he's going to probably be much, much better at the end of the season. So for these contest leagues, I think he has a little bit more special appeal. That you can hopefully have a league winner by the time, if you can just maneuver yourself into position, you can have a league winner there with Taylor. Jeez, I'm GD, you're rubbing off on me.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that for this analogy, Derrick Henry's a great example, because he was one of my highest on running backs last year because he was going in the early 4th, sometime in the 4th round. If Jonathan Taylor has a similar ceiling, then maybe he makes sense there. But Derrick Henry, I loved him there, and I had him 30+% of my teams. But this season, I have him. I'm probably underweight because he's going in the top 8 picks. So that profile makes a whole lot of sense outside of the first 2 rounds. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense in the first 2 rounds, and I think that's what everyone is trying to get at, because Derrick Henry rushing for 1,400 yards and 10 touchdowns is a great thing to have if that's your 4th round pick. But maybe in the 1st round, there were better things you could have done.
Yeah. All right, guys, we're going to take a slight break here. Before I get to FFPC, Dan, you and I were on the Podathon with the guys a couple months ago now, I believe. I don't know, my time scale is like way off, but we put out a little extra cheddar on there, and you were matching donations, and I had a signed and N'Keal Harry silver chromed helmet, mini helmet signed by him that we were giving away to one lucky donator, I guess, during the time that we were on. So the winner of that, shout out to Midway Monsters at FF_Monsters, fellow Canadian. He donated during that period of time, and he takes home that helmet. So I just wanted to put that out there because we talked about the contest, and just wanted to give a special shout out to our boy Monster for that victory, because it's a sweet little gift, especially him and Cam this year are going to blow it up. I'm just kidding.
Very nice. Love
yeah.
it.
So we talk about the FFPC often. It's getting close to the season. You guys know about all the goodness on there. You can play for $500,000 in 2 different ways right now, 2 different price points, the main event, the football guys. But it's also waiver wires are coming up for us dynasty players, right? We kind of waited all off season. We got some trades in there. We got some action going on, but there's still a lot of goodness out there in the waivers, especially for FFPC, because the rosters are shallower, so it gives the waivers a little more goodness for the owners to go out there and kind of look through and try to find a little golden nugget. So before I pass to Dan, and he gives his FFPC lovings. Why don't Halo? Because you guys both play on the FFPC. You guys play high stakes, high volumes. Why don't you guys each give, if you have like a little tip for the listener when they approach their waivers? You know, whether it's week one or just in general going into the season. Halo, I'll start with you, brother.
Yeah, man. So for a lot of the draft season, a couple of these guys were not even being drafted. They've moved up since camps got underway. But Brian Edwards and Steven Sims, two wide receivers that were either undrafted or going at the end of drafts now. Those two guys, they could be on your waiver wire. I think they're under 40% owned last time I checked FFPC Dynasty even. So those two guys should be, wide receiver twos on their respective teams and are an injury or a COVID away from seeing meaningful wide receiver two volume. So go get those guys. I think their ADPs are like wide receivers 69 and 70 the last 2 days. So basically free or laying there on the waiver wire.
Yeah, with that upside. Noah, what do you got for the listeners as we approach the waiver wire season?
Oh, it's really gross, but you might as well pick up Tyler Eifert because
Dan and I already put him everywhere.
If you're in my league, you can't because I already own him. Because I'm so pathetic. I can't quit him.
Well, the thing that was going to keep him from having any value this year is actually gone now. So there's a little bit of a opportunity there. So go ahead and add him, as gross as it might be. Probably look for Chris Conley as well.
I've got him on the end of most of my rosters on the FFPC too, especially those late best balls. Dan, I know you always give me like a good little nugget. I feel like every season with the waiver wire. So what's your nugget this year for the listeners?
Yeah, so I think you're going to want to take into account the fact that COVID could definitely have some effect on the season. I mean, we just saw a bunch of false positives. Imagine if that had been game day. And all these guys test positive and you're scrambling around. So I think it's a good year, number one, to really pay attention to those last roster spots on your team and make sure you're keeping them kind of buffed up. And then number two, I'm not spending a lot of money on any of my waiver ads because I think I'm going to need to make a lot more of them throughout the season. And so, my plan is to kind of outlast a lot of the other people in my leagues, and just be the guy at the midway point of the season who's got the hammer on money for bidding, in case I do need to go big on one guy or something like that. But I just want to make sure that I don't run out of moves before I run myself out of competition. So,
definitely. Sorry, go ahead, Hilo.
I just thought of one more that I could be remiss if I didn't mention because he's my dude. It's a little bit harder to pull off on FFPC with only the 20 roster spots, but if Quintez Cephas is chilling on your waiver wire,
that's Noah's guy.
That's my dude. He is especially with all the holdouts from the Lions wide receivers. I think they had two. He is going into the season as the wide receiver 4. We know there's injury issues ahead of him with Danny Amendola, even Marvin Jones. He is the type of wide receiver who could step into any of the 3 starting wide receiver positions and see meaningful snaps and volume. So he's a guy that I like a lot and is sitting on almost all of my teams.
Yeah, Noah actually brought him up. I'm trying to remember what the show was, but
that was when we did the Dynasty Rookie show back right after the draft.
That's right.
The Cephas pitch.
Yeah. And then 2 more that are guys that are probably wide receiver 2s on their team that nobody owns if you're interested in that kind of thing. Kendrick Bourne needs to be owned.
Yeah.
And Olabisi Johnson probably needs to be owned. So I think right now Olabisi Johnson is actually ahead of Justin Jefferson on the Vikings in 2 wide receiver sets. So just something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I think they'll both play, and there's just a lot of receivers out there right now, especially in the dynasty leagues. When you've only got a 20-man roster for the FFPC. I mean, you're gonna see guys like Josh Reynolds is probably gonna have a role at some point for the.
He's always on the waiver wires, eh?
Exactly.
He always needs to be on the waiver wires.
All the Scantling for the Packers could turn into something. Even really gross guys, like Auden Tate for sure. We talked about him. Not that he's gross, but Trent Taylor is going to be out there for San Francisco as well. But you can even look at some guys like Adam Humphries. He could have a pretty big role in Tennessee's offense. He just wasn't healthy at all last year, so it'll be interesting to see how he kind of fits in there. They paid him a pretty good chunk of money. Not that necessarily means everything, but he's certainly somebody that if I saw him have a couple of good games, I wouldn't hesitate to go ahead and throw him on back into my bench.
Yeah, my first one would have been along the lines of what you mentioned, Dan, with regards to COVID and just being maybe not as aggressive as you have been in the past, because it does feel like it's going to be one of those seasons where you're going to be hoping, especially in the latter half of the season, that you had maybe a little extra budget that you can spend, because whether it's your roster taking a hit or one of your big guns taking a hit, whether it's COVID and related or injuries and so on. So that would have been one. And the other one's like simple. I'm in a million leagues. Like I'm in way too many leagues, especially dynasties. So I set yourself an alarm, like go in your calendar, whatever you use as a calendar on your phone. And especially at this time right now, make sure when that first run is with your waiver wires in your different leagues, because they can creep up on you. And next thing you know, it happens to me all the time. You're looking at your email, inbox, and you've got that email that shows who everyone else grabbed. And you're like, oh man, I totally forgot about that waiver wire date or that league. So just make sure that you're on top of your dates, and you set yourself some reminders and alarms. So go check out myffpc.com. We tell you guys every week how good it is. It's definitely the best site to play fantasy, and we gave you some reasons here, and those big tournaments are definitely motivation enough for anyone. And if you're signing up for the first time, just send us a quick email at goatdistrict@gmail.com. Send me your email, username, that type of thing that you would use to for the site, and I'll get you a little added bonus sign up credit for your account to get you started. Guys, we talked about these guys through the conversation tonight, so I'm going to start with Noah. We've got a question from Steven Stark at Dynasty Holics. Acres owner, non-PPR, keep Cohen or trade for Darrell Henderson? I find this question very interesting just because it's non-PPR. Noah, you're going to keep the Rams running back, or are you going to go with the Bears pass catching running back?
Well, if it's non-PPR, why do you own Tariq Cohen?
I was wondering that, and he's also winning. That's it.
I would say definitely trade Tariq Cohen for Darrell Henderson, because there's not really any reason for you to have Tariq Cohen on your team if you're not getting those receptions. I think Tariq Cohen had close to 60 catches last year, and that was about half of his fantasy points. If you're in a non-PPR league, I think Tariq Cohen can just be on the waiver wire.
Hilo, how do you feel about it, Mark? I don't know. I'm very surprised by the result on this poll.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. It's he is pretty much in a PPR format. You're driving all the volume, or all of his value, from the volume of receptions. 2 straight years of just over or just under 100 targets. So there's really his carries aren't going to approach 120. Anything over 120 carries is not going to happen. So even if David Montgomery goes down, so he's just not the type of back that's going to see meaningful carries. So half PPR, I'd look to make that trade.
Dan, anything to add here?
Yeah, to me, it's just what you have to look at is Cohen or Henderson. If both of them kind of perform as expected, neither one of them is probably going to help you in non-PPR. But the thing is, with Cohen, that's basically what he's going to be. We have a high probability that, I think he's got a fairly narrow range of outcomes in non-PPR. Whereas Henderson, he's that guy who, if he sees his control of the Rams starting running back job, there's huge upside with that, much more so than Cohen. So, to me, I'm just going to, even though I think there's probably an 80% chance Cohen outscores Henderson in non-PPR even, just that 20% chance that Henderson really turns into something special, to me, that's worth it. That's why you want to make that move.
Well, and he said he's the Acres owner, so that makes
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. If he's and being the Acres owner, then that definitely cements it for sure.
Yeah, so 52% on the side of Cohen, which is odd to me because, for all the reasons you guys gave. So that's a little OTC there with the two running backs.
Yeah, and Henderson pulled a hamstring today. So
He should get even cheaper.
There you go.
He's probably going to be out until after week 1. So Cam Akers week 1 should see something close to a full workload. I know they'll mix Malcolm Brown in a little bit, but today Darrell Henderson pulled a hamstring. So something to keep an eye on going forward because that's something that can get re-injured very easily.
Yep, it can, but you should definitely be pointing that out to your trade partner too and say, hey, I can take him off your hands for cheap.
Here's my
See if it works.
Tariq Cohen.
Yep.
Trader Duck at Trader_Duck 12-team Dino Superflex PPR League. Chris Godwin or J.K. Dobbins, and I guess is that Swift?
Yeah.
So You're looking at two running backs for guy who finished wide receiver top 5 last year. Which way are you going, Mark?
I'd have to have more information about the team in question and what positions he needs filled. If he's trading away Godwin, it sounds like he needs some help with running back. And I would only make that move if I were not in contention this year.
So does that mean you find the value is there between the two? Like you find that it's a fair value, just you'd have to find what fits better on your roster?
I'm probably not the right person to ask because I am super high on J.K. Dobbins for 2021 and beyond, and I am undervaluing Chris Godwin versus where he is valued currently. So that brings it a little bit closer for me personally. When you're looking at dynasty trades, what you're really trying to do is leverage perceived value, and the perceived value on that trade is 100% on the side of Godwin. So you could get a lot more if you're trying to sell Godwin in that situation. But in a vacuum for pure moving forward dynasty value, I could see the two running backs carrying just as much value for 2021.
Yeah, it's like whether you're a Swift or a Dobbins fan or fan of both. I mean, value-wise, I feel like it's that on that side. It's like a good sell high. Noah, how do you feel about this trade?
I think that you'll probably get more value if you wait until week 5 or week 6 into the season, because both of those running backs probably won't have control of those backfields early on, even though both of those guys are going to be very, very good long term. For me in a vacuum, I'm definitely taking those two running backs. I mean, who's Chris Godwin's quarterback after this year?
Mm-hmm.
Who's his quarterback after next year?
James is coming back.
Of course. Yeah.
It's going to happen. Watch.
If you're just, for this season, you'd probably rather have Chris Godwin. But from a dynasty standpoint, there's no way that I think that Chris Godwin would be a better dynasty asset over the next, 10 years than those two running backs will be. So, I think that you're selling him short if you're selling him for that right now, because you can probably get those two players and more if you wait until you've already won your first 5 games of the season and you're not really that worried about it. If you just use Chris Godwin early on while Tom Brady is still upright, you could probably get more for Chris Godwin. You can get those two players plus something if you just wait a few games into the season, and you'll be negotiating from a position of strength, having started strong. So, I lean the running back side, but I would say right now it's not the time to make that trade.
Dan, is this one of the cases like when I sold my house and people were like, if you just waited like another 3 months, you would have got this much more? But then it's like, yeah, but I would have also paid more for what I bought, right? So as much as I agree with Noah with regards to the two running backs, there's also the perceived value like Mark talked about, but Godwin's value could drop too, right? If Tampa doesn't start off hot or he's not producing top 5, top 10 receiver weeks in those first few weeks, then he might be a guy whose value we see drop quite a bit. Dan, where do you sit on this trade here?
I probably sit a little bit closer to Noah. I think it's more of a timing issue. I mean, if I had to do the deal, If it was now or never, and I was not competing for this year, I would probably just go ahead and take the Dobbins and Swift side because I do like it more long term. But I agree. Sometimes you just gotta hold those potential deals in your back pocket and bring them out when the time is right. So I think Godwin's got a very good chance to hold value. Whereas in Dobbins and Swift, they'll hold a ton of value too. I mean, nobody's going to, give them away for peanuts, obviously, just because they have they don't start off real strong. But, if you can just get that little bit of that little nugget of doubt in the Dobbins and Swift owner's mind when you are offering this deal, you've got a much better chance of making it happen.
You always want to be on the right side of the desperation factor in a trade.
Yes. So Fantasyland, 65.9% on the side of the running backs with about 30% on Godwin's side. So interesting trade there from Trader Duck. We'll do one more here, guys. So this one's actually pretty interesting. I don't usually like straight up trades like, receiver for receiver or running back receiver for running back receiver. But this one's interesting just because of the guys involved. So which side? And it's a 16-team dynasty. So they're definitely a different factor. They're a different flavor with the 16-team versus a 12. So, Dan, I haven't gone to you first all night. So I'm going to go to you first on this one. Lev Bell, your boy Lev Bell and Isabella, or Deontay Johnson, first half of preseason hype, because the hype kind of seems to have faded away a bit with him, and Latavius Murray out there behind Kamara. Where do you sit on this trade?
I mean, this is going to really depend on whether I'm competing or not, what my needs are. I guess you would think that the guy who's trading away Deontay Johnson and getting Lev Bell probably needs running backs. And, if so, then, I think Lev Bell's got one more decent season in him. Whether Gase will get it out of him or not, I have no idea. But, I think he's got one more good season in him. If he can just make his way through the Gase maze to productivity. But overall, long term, I would rather have the Deontay Johnson side, just because I think, he's shown enough to be a solid player. Murray and Bell, they're both not long for this world in Dynasty. Isabella hasn't ever really proven anything. He's kind of, when his prospect profile when he was coming out was one of those where you're looking at him and you're going, if this guy hits, he could hit really big. But there's also a good chance that he's just a swing and a miss. So, Johnson has definitely showed he's not a swing and a miss. So that would be the side I would lean on.
Noah, how do you feel about it?
Well, I think that if you're projecting a meteor to come and just end it all at the end of 2020, then I would definitely go with the Le'Veon Bell side of things. If you're looking for much past this season or even next season, then I think that I would lean the Deontay Johnson side. But if you're trying to win this year, I think Le'Veon Bell probably helps you win more this year than Deontay Johnson. But it also really depends on how the rest of the team is put together and what other pieces you have. I think that if you have some of the other players on the Steelers, it might make more sense to go after Deontay Johnson, because I think him being good raises the overall ceiling of that offense tremendously. I think if Deontay Johnson isn't good, then this season could be a tough one for Steelers offense. So just if you look at some of the contingent plays there, it may make sense. But for this season and probably next season, I would lean the Le'Veon Bell side.
So, Mark, while Noah is blasting the earth to get rid of Bell before he retires, drops another half on him. What are your thoughts on this trade?
Yeah, so I'm a little bit more with Noah here in the sense that I'm typically playing Dynasty a little bit more aggressive than a lot of my league mates. And if I see an opportunity to get a guy like Le'Veon Bell, who should have locked in volume at least for this year and possibly for next, I'll be more apt to deal a player who has a 12-game sample at the wide receiver position to lock up that kind of production. Another kind of thing that would go into my mind with this is typically I am loading up on young wide receivers in a startup. So it kind of depends also where in the kind of like how old this league is, because personally I would have a lot of young wide receivers in addition to Deontay Johnson, where I could be able to take that risk and pull away Le'Veon Bell.
You wouldn't be depending on him, right?
Yeah, exactly. So Deontay Johnson is more so a bench stash for me than a bona fide flex where you're banking on him to fill your flex position. So he's an upside hold. So at this point, I have no problem dealing him for a guy like Le'Veon.
So yeah, and in a 16-team league, that's the only thing. I mean, you might be forced into starting him because it's 16 teamers. Every team's got holes, and so it does kind of change the dynamic, I think, a little bit. But yeah, I totally agree with you guys. If you're contending, then Bell is probably the pick. But what do you think, JD?
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, you're totally, especially the 16 team that you threw in there. I was actually looking to see like if Murray was even close to what Bell was putting out on a point per game average, but they're about 5 points, separated. I'm not a Lev Bell guy at all. I don't own any shares. I was just curious to know. I know you guys positioned it with regards to this trade, but do you guys think Bell performs even close to where he's going? Like, how do you guys feel about Bell this year, just for 2020, just to finish this off? Because I feel like he's someone that I've been shying away from. I'm not interested in. You guys feel like you want to change my mind at all, or you feel the same way?
I think he is someone I'm valuing him very similar to a guy like Gurley. Gurley is higher on my board, obviously, than Lev Bell, but really what you're getting is weekly floor with spike potential. And the reason for that is expected target volume. Those two offenses are going to be slinging the ball left and right, and those two running backs are going to be highly involved in that slinging. So if you get a guy who is going in the fourth, I liked Gurley more when he was going in the fourth, but I'll still take some shots here and there in the third. But what you're really getting is a bona fide weekly floor with that receiving volume, and then if he scores, then you're going to start to see that weekly ceiling. So I don't mind those guys much where they're going.
Yeah, you can just throw David Johnson right in with those two, and in my opinion.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that about where he's going, because I feel like I haven't taken Gurley in a while, and I had a lot of shares earlier, and it's because that shift, right? He moved up like a round and a half. Yeah, and it's like I'm looking elsewhere in that range. Noah, I know you gave your thoughts on that trade, but how do you feel about Bell in 2020?
Well, you got to hope that he gets a lot of receptions, because that's really his path to value. I don't take him really at all. If he fell to the fifth, I'd be somewhat interested. I've taken him a couple times in the fifth, but I don't think I've taken him once in the fourth. Every team that Gase has coached for the last 4 years has been last in the NFL in running back carries inside the 20. So you're not going to have people say, oh, well, he's the goal line back. Well, there's no such thing as a goal line back on a Gase team, because whether he was in Miami or in New York, the team that he's coached has been last in carries inside of the 20. So you're not going to have a high touchdown expectation. You're hoping for some volume on receiving. You're not going to have a huge number of carries because they're going to be losing a lot of games. They're going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL. And, of that group of three running backs you guys just mentioned, I'll take David Johnson, or I'll just pass.
Yeah, he was RB7 in targets last year. Bell 78. I actually didn't realize he was over 5 targets a game, which is offers like we talked about. At least gives you that nice floor.
Right, but they're some of the lowest value targets in the NFL because they're always just dump offs when nothing else is going right. So they'll be less valuable than the targets that a lot of other running backs get. Like the targets that the Arizona running backs get will be much more valuable than the targets that the Jets running backs get.
I think the only Jets I have on any rosters that I own are Crowder and Perriman. Those are the only, just at their price where they were going. You guys are all shaking your heads. I'm like,
Herndon, add Herndon.
And yeah, Herndon's
and
good
Herndon.
too.
Oh, yeah. Actually, sorry, I apologize. One of my favorite late tight ends. Yeah.
Smash.
Yeah, he's in that same tier actually. Those other guys, he's the last guy in my tier with those other guys we talked about earlier in the tight end. So I love that call. Sorry, I forgot about Herndon. Great call. All right, boys, this has been a blast as usual. Noah, because you brought us that clean egg, that clean white cut to the screen here. I'm going to go to you first, brother. It's always a blast having you on. I say it every time you come on. You're one of the best follows on Twitter. So remind people where they can find you and any other goodness you want to share before we close this out.
You can find me on Twitter at Noah Riddell. I've been doing some betting and I've written a few articles on best ball for FTN Fantasy as well. So if you want to check that out, you're welcome to check that out. FTN Bets as well is where I'm doing some of my sports betting content. But just check me out on Twitter. It's at my name, Noah Riddell. And if you don't find me entertaining, you can unfollow. It doesn't really bother me. So
I'm really rich.
Mark, Mr. Hilo, or also known as Hilo for people who read it. Thanks for coming on, brother. Always a blast. And that site sounds amazing. So please remind people, a quick blur what it is again and where they can find it. Anything else you want to close this out with?
Yeah, head on over to ffworldseries.com for the quarterly format. You can also find me hanging out at oneweekseason.com, dropping a course later this week on game theory. It's highly DFS centric, but there's a lot of good stuff for season long and best ball as well. So over at oneweekseason.com, hanging out with JM Two-Line and dropping some knowledge there.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, guys. Dan, I actually forgot to mention this. We are drafting our roster in the next couple days. Remind me, is it on the 24th or 25th as I pull this thing up?
Tuesday night, so 2 days.
Perfect. So Dan and I, Quarter Milli Billies, FFPC Football Guys Players Championship. We are doing our live draft, and we're going to do it live on this channel. So make sure you subscribe. I don't know if we're going to come on before. We might come on a little earlier to have a little chat. A little huddle before the big game. And if you want to join us, we'll I'm sure it'll be fun to follow along. Dan, were there some heavy hitters that we need to look out for in our league? I can't remember. I think you gave us like the green light. I think you said we're pretty good, but
there wasn't anybody. I mean, if you're in that league and you're listening to this, you're the sorry in advance, but
are the spots available?
No. It filled up, but yeah, there's nobody who's somebody that I would regard as being like super, super scary. There are a couple names I've seen around before, but I haven't drafted them against them enough to really know what they're about. So I would just say it's incomplete on that, but there's for sure, I'm not seeing anybody that we for sure need to worry about. So there's just people who we might need to worry about. And as always in these things, there's going to be one or two people who are really on top of it, even without badges. So, don't just look at a league and say, well, there's no badges in this, so it's going to be easy. You take your finger off it like that, you're going to find you're running bad on that league pretty quickly. So you got to draft as if everybody else really knows what they're doing until it's proven otherwise.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about it. I feel pretty good about it going into it. I think you and I this is going to be fun because we haven't really we did those 2 Dino startups, but this will be our first big league when this off season. So it'll be fun to put this thing together, especially live. It'll be interesting to see what turns and unexpected.
We've got the 102, so the first pick is probably not too difficult. All we need to do is just hope that there's a Giants fan in the 101, and so we can slide up and get McCaffrey.
Josh Jacobs, right, Mark?
Yeah, or CH. Yeah, take him. Take.
Yeah, somebody might grab him. You never know.
All right, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Check us out on YouTube, any platform you listen to podcasts. #AlwaysBeTrading. And tag Dan and I on those trades at Overhyped Sleeper. No, in the end, I'm at Go District. Be safe, be happy, and we'll check you all